quantum physics for dummies, okay? Don't be afraid of the term quantum physics. I've talked to a lot of people and their eyes kind of like get big and or glaze over because it's almost as if they're saying, I don't even understand physics, let alone quantum physics. It's not that difficult. If I can understand it, anyone can. And, recently somebody said to me, well, you're on a different level. Not really. I tried to read this book, Science After Babel, by David Belinsky, completely over my head. Well, half of it. I just had to skip entire chapters because, he's talking about the similar things that I understand, but he's going way deeper, and particularly with mathematics, heavy-duty mathematics, which are just beyond my ken. Quantum physics is actually quite simple. It's amazing, but it's not that difficult to understand. In the 20th century, physicists began to discover that the smallest units in our universe, the things that are billions of times smaller than an atom, the fundamental particles, right, is what they're looking for. And what they discovered is that these things don't exist the way we typically perceive physical things existing. They exist in what is typically called the form of a wave function. And when that wave function is collapsed, then that particle, if you can call it that, can become a particle. But it can also become a wave. It can manifest into different things. And there's still lots of speculation and confusion about it. But it looks as if even space itself, which is invisible, right? It's not material. It's the thing that matter floats around in. Space-time itself appears to be quantized. So a quanta can become space-time. It can become energy in the form of a light photon, or it can become a physical particle of which atoms can be built. And that's a basic overview. That's all we need to understand, is that until that wave function is collapsed, it exists in what they call a superposition. And it isn't even real in the traditional sense. And that is fascinating because science has revealed that our universe is quite strange. Reality is more complicated than we thought it was. And this came up, this was a post of mine just a couple days ago, but I wanted to put it in video form because I know some people find videos easier. And when you can hear somebody's voice, their tone, that helps also to understand what's being said. I personally like to read things because I can slow it down to my own speed, which is pretty slow, so I can digest it. And at any rate, it came up because a rather hostile person in the Lost Coast Outpost discussion thread was attempting to mock me. And his question was, with regard to the Bible, why didn't Yahweh come himself? Why did he send a substitute? Because I was making the case that, it was God taking responsibility for our sin, right? It was, in a sense, always God's cross to bear, since he's the one that gave us freedom of will, and in his omniscience, he could see that we would misuse it. He could see us misuse it. And he's confusing a couple different categories there. Yes, in a sense, in terms of salvation, Christ is our substitute. He takes responsibility for us. But he's not a substitute for God. He is God. And that is another question that appears far more difficult than it really is. Yes, it's amazing, but it's not that hard to understand, this concept of God as a Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. As C.S. Lewis put it, God revealed himself to mankind as super personal, or the three-personal being. What is that? Well, it bears a striking resemblance to what scientists have uncovered in quantum mechanics. So let me read this, because I responded to him, and I said, or actually this was the second response to a different person making the same point, but I think I made it better here. I think I articulated it better. God appeared empirically in the flesh, limited to our space-time. Okay? And some people will mock the idea of God as a Trinity. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. That would be the fallacy of the argument from ignorance. Because we don't understand it, it's not true. Well, that does not follow. He asked how a spatially limited and empirical man, like the person of Jesus, could be a manifestation of what we claim is a spatially unlimited God who created space and matter. So how can God be manifest in a man who is finite? What I said to him is, you may as well ask why the particle appeared and not the wave in your double slit experiment. The fact remains, the quanta appeared. If you've seen one manifestation of the superposition, when the wave function collapses, you've seen them all, albeit collapsed locally. So it's been reduced. Okay? And that's this verse. Jesus actually explained this to his befuddled disciples. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. And Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and still you do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? What we have here is what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1, that God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, are clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that men are without excuse. And without excuse to understand enough that the created world, God created to reveal himself on a certain level. And so when we see that the universe is, and that subatomic particles exist in a superposition, that is God showing us that you may not be able to understand these things, but I also am super personal, a being at a higher state of being than yourselves, who experiences relationship within himself. And the most incredible thing about Christianity and God's revelation in it is that he lowered himself to our level so that he could talk to us and relate to us on a level that we could comprehend. C.S. Lewis talked about it as if, what did he call it? A great condescension. It'd be like you and I becoming a banana slug so we could talk to banana slugs. Something along those lines. And one of the things that convicts me is that Lewis went on to say that that's almost the test of what makes a man great. Can you condescend, not to be condescending, but can you take what you know and make it relatable to a child? Or are you above it? And, and there's been a lot of times that I've carried an attitude of being better than and frustrated in trying to communicate with people who were rightly struggling with very deep things and becoming angry. At any rate, I hope that is relatable. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, I sure hope so.